According to ESPN, the Florida Gators are a top 15 team in the country. And while they're right, they're also wrong.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever the podcast and on YouTube. Happy Friday. I am Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And ESPN yesterday put out their post-spring SP plus rankings, which, I mean, a mouthful, right? And we'll go through the entire top 25. But as ESPN explains it, SP Plus is preseason projections based on three factors primarily. One, returning production, okay? Which I have my own issues with because I think that returning production in itself is a very vague statement. Just because I think, there's somewhere you could say, returning production as in players returning to college, or returning production as in players returning from that team to that team. And I think that that's where a lot of things get twisted, because for me, I don't necessarily care too much if a player is coming back to college but wasn't with Florida, because then you still have to go through all the learning curves. It's just you're probably ahead of the curve strength and conditioning and technique wise. But outside of that, and even then, again, learning the offense, learning the system or defense as well matters, right? And so we're going to go through these rankings. We're going to go through the offense and defense where Florida ranks. And so it's based on returning production is the first metric that they put. Recent recruiting, which, again, a thing that I have an issue with, because I think that a lot of these, which, by the way, this recent recruiting includes transfers. So there's a possibility that you're kind of double counting returning production if returning production here is including the incoming transfers, which I think it does. Just because the way that they explain it says the returning production numbers are based on rosters I have updated as much as humanly possible to account for transfers and attrition. I feel like you wouldn't need to say to account for transfers if you were talking only about transfers out, because that's attrition, right? So I do think that they count transfers in there. And then recent recruiting said that they count transfers, which kind of double counts your transfers. Which I'm not saying to not count transfers. I'm not saying that double counting them is a bad thing. I'm just saying to keep that in mind, that you are double counting some things. And my bigger issue is just including recruiting in general. For ESPN, I would imagine most of what they include is their rankings, because this is still an ESPN thing. But there's that. And then it's also based on the previous 4 seasons to go how they describe it, overall program health, right? And another thing that they include in it, that it is tempo adjusted and opponent adjusted, which if you follow basketball and we talk about, Ken Palm, a lot of what they do is tempo adjusted and opponent adjusted as well. So nothing new there, nothing revolutionary there. But that's how these numbers are made up, right? And the post-spring SP Plus rankings have, in order, Ohio State first, Alabama second, Penn State third, Georgia fourth, Texas fifth, Notre Dame sixth, Oregon seventh, Clemson eighth, LSU ninth, Michigan 10th, Ole Miss 11th, Miami 12th, Tennessee 13th, and then Florida at 14th. And after Florida, it goes Texas A&M, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Kansas State, Illinois, SMU, Missouri, Arizona State, Indiana, Louisville, Auburn, Louisville, Auburn, and then, the list goes down for all 136 schools there. And they also said that this time they are including the coaching changes are being involved in it. So UNLV or Louisiana Tech are the examples that they gave. But either way, I just find it odd. By the way, they also gave Florida an 18% chance of going 10-2. Okay. Which is basically, you simulate the season 5 times, you play the season 5 times, and once they're going to go 10-2. When we talk about the returning production rankings, Florida is not as high as I think many of us would anticipate. Florida's 30th, and I think for a lot of Florida Gators fans, we talk about the strength is the returning production, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I think that's where Florida got a little bit hurt there as well. But again, this is including rankings. So, for example, or this is including transfers. So when you talk about the overall sites, the overall rankings, you've got LSU is 9th. Ole Miss is 11th. Miami is 12th. And for me, I look at that and I just think like that's crazy considering LSU went heavy in the portal. They got a lot of receivers in the portal. They changed a lot in the portal. I think they got better. I just don't know how long it's going to take them to gel there. And Miami also went pretty portal heavy. They brought in 19 or 20 players in the portal this year. And then whether or not they're starters or not, it's still roster attrition. And even in this article, they acknowledge, hey, we're talking about roster management now. That's why we include the portal. So there's that. Florida, by the way, was given the second hardest schedule in the country, only behind Oklahoma. That's it. And in the simulation, whatever you want to call it, on average, Florida would win 7 games. I think Florida will win more than that. I've said before, I think that if you don't make the college football playoff, you can justifiably get rid of Billy. Just because I think this roster is fantastic. And so that's why I go, well, if you don't live up to expectations, barring, some kind of major injury or major injuries, because I don't think that you could just get by with just, one guy got injured. Sorry. Even if it's Lagway. I'll say that. I'll add that caveat. Even if it's Lagway, I'm not giving it to you because that happened last year. You should have been prepared for it this year. And if you're not, that's on you. But so I do think that there's some very obvious flaws in all of this. In terms of offensive ranking, Florida is 16th in the country. In terms of defensive ranking, Florida is 21st in the country. And in terms of special teams, Florida is 8th. And I know that, there's going to be people that say 16th, what the hell? 21st, what the hell? I'm cool with those rankings because I've said before, I think offensively Florida needs to do a lot. Also, we will say this. Miami came in first offensively. I don't think anybody believes that, right? And I will say this. I think that part of that tempo adjustment, and also this is not saying that necessarily these are the top teams. This is essentially projecting what the top 25 would look like. And so that's why we say schedule matters there. Like Ohio State's number 1. They got the 21st schedule. Penn State's number 3. They got the 29th schedule. Stuff like that. Notre Dame's number 6. They got the 44th schedule. Miami is 12th. They got the 36th schedule. Stuff like that. And again, Florida has the second hardest schedule, and Oklahoma, who's at 16, has the number 1 most difficult schedule. Tempo matters, and last year, Miami went very up-tempo. I don't think that they'll do the same thing this year just because I don't think Carson Beck is that kind of quarterback. I think Cam Ward is. But I think that where they have Florida in the sense of, hey, Florida's a top 15 team, I think that's right. But I think that you're dead wrong by excluding Florida from being in the top 12. Okay, and part of that is I'm lower on a lot of these other teams. Like I'm lower on Notre Dame this year, LSU. Michigan, I don't think is going to be there next year. I think Michigan's going to be really scary. This year, I don't. Ole Miss, not bought in on it. I need to see Austin Simmons do it over a large sample size. And Miami, I've said. Tennessee, we'll see what they're going to be. Losing your starting quarterback in the spring portal is almost unheard of, but we saw it there. So I think that these rankings are right in the range, but I think that they're kind of way off. We're going to talk about Florida's schedule in these rankings when we get back with Locked On Gators. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all of my money go? Well, between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's very easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, all of your investments, all of your spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building your wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Use code LOCKEDONCollege with no spaces for half off your first year with monarchmoney.com. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available daily and free. We listen to the podcast and on YouTube. And the Florida Gators, like I said, have the second most difficult schedule on these rankings, behind only Oklahoma, which should play each other next year. We'll see how that schedule actually shapes up, because, I mean, these guys are just ridiculous with the scheduling. But you look at who Florida plays on these rankings, and you get to number 4, and then you got a Florida matchup, right? Because Georgia came in 4th in the entire rankings, which, again, I disagree with. I'm not saying that they can't wind up there, but to say that they've got the 8th best offense, the 4th best defense, and the best special teams is very peculiar, I'll say. I'll say peculiar. Then you have to go all the way down one spot to number 5 for Texas, because Texas is 5th in the country. Offensively, they got number 17. Defense, number 1, which I think I agree with. I think Texas's defense is just, I don't know what anyone's going to do against them. I'm going to be honest with you. I realize I'm playing with my hair. I don't know what anyone's going to do against them. That's an insane defensive front. I think you just got to win there, and you got to make it ugly. They also have a negative ranking in special teams. They're 135th out of 136. So there's that. So you got number 4 and number 5 on the schedule. Then you go to number 9, and you got LSU, which is a road game. And we talked about LSU already. Then you go to 11, and you got Ole Miss, which is a road game. We talked about Ole Miss a bit already. Then you got number 12, which is Miami, which is a road game. And we talked about Miami already. Then you go to 13, and you got Tennessee. And so you go 4, 5, 9, 11, 12, 13. Like, that's crazy to me that you got 6 of your 12 opponents are ahead of you, and you're 14th. Like, this isn't like you're 40th and 6 of your opponents are on that list. You're 14. That's it. Then you go, guess what? 15 on the list as well. Like, that is insane stuff. And I'm not complaining about it at all. I've said before, like, I'm cool with a tough schedule. I want to go, because I want to be good enough to earn that. Like, I want to be good enough where you go, hey, they've got the toughest schedule in the country. And you go, I don't give a flying you know what. Win the games. You're good enough to do that. And I'll say this, because I've been very open. I disagree with these rankings, where quite a few of these teams are. I don't care that there are 6 teams ahead of you that you play, because I think you're better than at least half of them. I think you're better than Tennessee, Miami, Ole Miss, and LSU. I think that you're going to be neck and neck with Georgia. And I think Texas is a better team, although I do think Florida has a very realistic chance of winning that game, because we don't know what their offense is going to look like fully. So I will say that I don't care that these teams are ahead of you. Beat their ass. Simple as that. Like, I think that you should be a good enough team to do that. And so at 15, you got Texas A&M, which is, again, a team on your schedule. And then you don't have another ranked opponent for quite some time. You get to ranked. You don't have another opponent on this list until 36, and that's Florida State. So you got 7 in the top 15. You're one of those teams. So half of the possible teams to be picked that it could be on your schedule, 7 of them are on there. Half of those teams there. And then you go all the way down to 36, and you get Florida State, which, again, is going to be a lot of projection from the portal, because that's what they do every year now, which, yikes, because, yeah, that's going to suck. Then you go to 43, which is Kentucky, which is they're not in a good spot in these rankings. Like for example, Ohio State, their SP plus rating 29.5, Florida 17.3. So, a 12-point difference between number 1 and number 14. And then you get all the way to 36 for Florida State, and it's 7.2, 43 for Kentucky, and it's 4.7. And then after Kentucky, we've got to go all the way down, and I'm doing this on the fly. I was going to say UCF. UCF is 61st, but they're not on the schedule this year. They were a last year only team. Mississippi State is 71st, ahead of Toledo, tied with Toledo, but Toledo beat them last year. Go Rockets, baby. That's all I'll say about that one. That's right. We got Toledo there. No matter what, I'll always have Toledo too. But I think that when you look at this schedule, like it's tough, right? It's going to be a bitch. There's no other way to put it. And I think that when we talk about it, I think that people overplay the road impact of these games. I do. I think that a good reason, or I think that a reason that a good number of these teams are ahead of Florida is the tempo stuff. Georgia's going to go up tempo. Texas is going to go up tempo. LSU is going to be up tempo. Ole Miss is going to be up tempo. I don't know about Miami or Tennessee. Last year they were up tempo, and again, that plays a part of it. We talk about recent success over the past 4 years. Tennessee deserves to be in there, right? They've been successful over recent seasons, and so I think you look at a lot of these teams and you go, all right, well, tempo playing into it makes a lot of sense, right? Tempo playing into it. Again, strength of schedule here. It's not like, or it's not so much. If your schedule is really difficult, then you're getting bumped up these rankings a ton. It's that, hey, you're gonna look better if you're playing a weaker schedule, and so that's included in that. Like I said, recruiting plays a part in there, which I think that's the reason that Texas A&M's number 15, because it's still recruiting over the past 4-ish years, and so Texas A&M still has some residual there, but they haven't been all that, right? And so, that's why I look at these rankings and I say, I understand it. And I think that most of them are generally in the range that they should be. But there's deep flaws when you talk about returning production and you're including a bunch of teams that win and got, 15 to 22 players in the portal. That's not returning production. That's not. I understand that they are returning to school. They're not returning to your team. They're not returning to your system. That's not returning production. Those are different things. Where Florida is great is with returning production. We're going to talk about that in a second on Locked On Gators. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free, wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. And to wrap up today's show, we are talking about the returning production here for Florida, because I think this is one area where Florida can destroy other teams. In terms of, and I'm not even saying, on the field, I think this team is going to be a very talented team. I know this team's going to be a very talented team, or they are a very talented team. I know that they are a playoff caliber team. And for me, a big part of that is the returning production. It is I know DJ Lagway did not start the whole year. I know DJ Lagway isn't guaranteed to take that next step, right? I think he will, because I think that he's got all the physical tools, and everything we've ever seen or heard about his work ethic tells you, hey, he's probably going to be really freaking good. So I think that we can project DJ Lagway to be really good, but I think returning production, he qualifies there. So you got quarterback coming back. You've got 2 to 3 running backs, if you consider Trayon Webb a big-time contributor last year. I don't. And so I say 2 running backs coming back that you know what you got. You've got 2 of your 3 tight ends from last year coming back, Arlis Boardingham being the only one that's gone. Wide receiver is, I think, the only spotty, I'll say air quotes for those only listening, spotty position on offense, because you got J. Michael Sturdivant coming in. which he counts in the SP plus rankings. I don't count him as returning production. I count him as a player that you brought in and he's on the roster, of course, but returning production, I don't count that. Trey Wilson, I don't really count him much for returning production because last year he wasn't available. Played 4 games last year. So while he has production from the year prior, and you can count that, sure, if you want, you can count what he did last year. But I feel like when we're talking about these projections, we're basing it a lot off of last year, and there's not much from Trey for last year. So there's that. And then I think most importantly, outside of quarterback on this offense, is that you got 4/5 of your starting offensive line returning. That's huge. There are not many teams that can say that. There's just not. To say, hey, yeah, 80% of our starting offensive line is back for a second season together. That's rare. Like in the NFL, sure, you can get away with it. There's probably more teams that have that. But in college where guys are not here long and you got to constantly cycle in and out, and it's constantly like, hey, there's 2 seniors on this team or 2 seniors on this line, a true freshman and, 1 sophomore, 1 junior. It's rare that those guys are all going to be back starting because those seniors leave and then, all right, well, we can return 3 of our 5 for the next year, but then guess what? We can't return 4 out of 5. And so it's very rare to have that. And I don't think enough people are giving Florida props for just having. I'm not saying you got to go, oh, good job getting 4 of your 5 back. But I don't think enough people are taking that into account because winning games straight up starts in the trenches. That's it. You look at all these teams that rebuild and how they do it, and they go, hey, we got to get in the trenches first. And then once we're in the trenches, then we can challenge and we can go win. And so I think that's a huge part that I don't think enough people are acknowledging. We do here. Then on defense, by the way, special teams, you got your long snapper back, you got your kicker back, and you got a new punter who Tommy Doman, coming from Michigan, counts for the SP plus rankings in this returning production on special teams. Although I think he's actually going to be better for Florida than he was for Michigan. So I will say that. I think the warm weather is going to help the ball travel more like it always does. And so it could help. But defensive returning production, you've got interior defensive line is the only spot that I look at and I go, all right, there's really nobody proven there at all, right? Because the interior defensive line, you've got Caleb Banks there. And I'm more specifically talking about, or actually, I worded that poorly. Let me backtrack 10 seconds. I think interior defensive line is the only spot where you don't have starters that are proven throughout, right? Like, for example, linebacker, you lost Shamar James, but you got Pup Howard and you've got Jaden Robinson. And we know what they are. Like, we know they're damn good football players. And so even though it's not returning starters there, you're returning 1 starter, bringing in a guy. Defensive line, interior defensive line, we don't have that. We have 1 guy, but we still have a question mark at nose tackle. Caleb Banks, proven dominant force. Interior defensive line next to him, the nose tackle spot, not proven dominant force. Not proven in general, let alone dominant force. So that an area that is a concern. You got 2 edges coming back that you know generally what they are. Tyreak Sapp's a really good football player overall. I think again he's I could see Tyreak Sapp being the guy from this defensive front that plays 14, 15 years in the league. And people are just like, man, remember that guy? Like I think he's going to be one of those guys where I don't even know if he's going to be a superstar. But I think he's going to be a guy that has a long career in the NFL just because his play style works. He's not a guy where it's like, oh, yeah, well, if I don't have my quick first step, I have nothing. He's a very well-rounded player. I think that's going to help him stick. And then on the other edge, you have George Gums, who's stepping into a full-time starting role after Jack Pyburn was playing there a lot. Linebackers, we talked about. 2 corners coming back that you generally know what they can give you. Right? Deshaun Johnson and Devin Moore. We generally know what they can give. Cormani, we don't. And anybody else behind them, we don't really know what they're going to give you. But we do know that they got a lot of potential. And you got 2 guys that I thought looked pretty damn good on film last year. Both of your starting safeties are back as well. You've got your starting star back as well with Sharif Denson. Like, you got a lot of guys returning on defense. There's a reason that this team was 21st here, and I don't know what it is. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I don't think the returning production justifies 21st because I think the returning production should be way higher. So there's a reason that ESPN gives you, 21st defensively. I don't know what the hell it is. I can't tell you. I just can't. Maybe it's part of the tempo adjustment stuff, but I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. I think this defense is going to be really good. And look, ranking one, like they might end up being the 21st defense, but in terms of are they 21st best, they're better. I don't care what the stats say. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available daily and free, wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. We will be back tomorrow. No, we won't. Unless there's news. If there's news, then sure. But we will be back Monday at the absolute latest to talk more Florida Gators. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI, and I will see you all next time.